and they'll decelerate it down to about 15, 16 miles per hour, and that will be the speed in which the spacecraft is traveling upon splashdown. Once again, we're anticipating splashdown at 12:41 a.m.
Meters.
Copy, 1,000.
We'll now begin to hear Crew-11 Commander Zena Cardman call out the altitude from her seat there in Dragon Endeavour. SpaceX's mission control team in Hawthorne continues to report the precise landing coordinates to the recovery team.
Copy, 800.
Those main parachutes now fully reefed or inflated. We ensure that the parachutes inflate over a few seconds to help reduce the shock to the system.
600 meters.
Copy, 600.
All around great views of Dragon Endeavour as it continues its way back to Earth.
Copy, 400. Crew are braced.
Standing by for splashdown. Splashdown of Crew-11. After 167 days in space, Dragon and NASA astronauts Zena Cardman and Mike Fincke, Kimiya Yui of JAXA, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov are back on Earth.
Dragon, SpaceX, we see splashdown.
SpaceX Dragon, copy, concur. Splashdown and mains are cut. We are in 4.800.
SpaceX copies, and we see the same. Mains cut. On behalf of SpaceX and NASA, welcome home, Crew-11.
SpaceX Dragon, it's so good to be home. With deep gratitude to the teams who got us there and back.
Vehicle safety verifications in progress. We'll report back when recovery personnel are en route.
Dragon copies.
Again, we have splashdown of NASA's SpaceX Crew-11 mission, a 167-day mission, 165 of those being spent on board the International Space Station, now splashing down off the coast of California. That splashdown coming right on time at 2:41 a.m. Central Time. The SpaceX recovery ship and team has been waiting for Dragon splashdown, and they will now begin making their way to the splashdown location. It looks like we even have a couple of visitors around the spacecraft. If you look very closely, you might even see some dolphins. Again, a return by the books for Crew-11, having splashed down at 2:41 a.m. Central Time off the coast of California. We will now begin moving into the recovery process. We'll see the boats begin to approach and inspect the spacecraft by checking for hypergol and other ordnance checks. They will begin to rig the spacecraft and prepare it to be lifted on that recovery ship. And this is a great view of some of those boats that go out and check the spacecraft. They are going to be sniffing it, essentially, for these hazardous fuels that can linger once the spacecraft has re-entered Earth's atmosphere.
SpaceX Dragon, 4.800, Section 3. We are in Stable 1.
SpaceX copies. Stable 1.
That's the voice of NASA astronaut and commander of Crew-11, Zena Cardman, reporting back that they are working through their procedures and that the capsule is in Stable 1, which is the position that you see on your screen here, where it is upright in the water. This is just what we were hoping for, and again, it's been a completely nominal and by-the-books return for the crew today. This is a live view of Crew-11 aboard Dragon from the SpaceX recovery vehicle, or from their SpaceX recovery ship. And this day for the crew started about 10.5 hours ago when they undocked from the International Space Station. SpaceX
Dragon,
recovery
SpaceX.
teams have been given the go to approach.
SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in 1 minute.
Copy, 1 minute. Thank you.
And you just heard that call out from the Corps in Hawthorne, California, to the crew aboard Dragon, that the SpaceX personnel who have been in the general vicinity of Dragon's anticipated splashdown location now have the go to approach the spacecraft and begin that recovery process.
All right, so as we heard, we are now standing by for recovery of the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft with NASA astronaut Zena Cardman and Mike Fincke, Kimiya Yui of JAXA, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov, who are inside that spacecraft that you see there. Now, Dragon has already, I would also like to point out, we've got some folks here approaching the spacecraft now that they have gotten the okay for the approach. They're on some fast boats there. This is the SpaceX recovery team. Personally, one of my favorite teams to work with here at SpaceX. They're a really scrappy crew, and they're going to work really quickly here to get the Crew-11 team out of the water. And it's always a lot of fun to watch these operations proceed. Now, Dragon has already autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. For those of you that perhaps just joined us, the return has gone very smoothly so far, as Leah had mentioned. Dragon successfully splashed down off the coast of San Diego, California at 12:41 a.m. Pacific time, 3:41 a.m. Eastern time. Approximately 10.5 hours prior to splashdown, Dragon autonomously undocked from the International Space Station, completed a series of departure burns, jettisoned its trunk section, and performed its final burn, which was the deorbit burn, and that placed itself on a trajectory toward Southern California, specifically off the coast of San Diego. So Dragon successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a gentle splashdown. So we're now going to follow the final part of the crew's journey as the Dragon spacecraft is lifted out of the water and placed on the recovery boat. So we see here the recovery team beginning to prepare. One of the most important steps will be to
Dragon SpaceX, hypergol sweeps and unfired ordnance checks, nominal. Rigging in progress, approximately 25 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC. The next call you hear will be from SpaceX flight surgeon on Dragon to ground private.
Dragon copies. 25 minutes until lift. Standing by for PMC.
All right, we heard there that the crew will have an opportunity for a private medical conference with the flight surgeon. That is standard for all of our crew returns. That will be done on a private channel. Great view here from the drone. This is our first look at the front side of Dragon Endeavour. I love this view because you can see the lights on the inside. This crew member here is actually on the capsule, beginning to place the rigging required for the lift onto the large recovery vessel. This takes a few minutes to essentially lasso and wrangle the Dragon capsule as it gently bobs there in the water. Not in the picture, there is another fast boat that is recovering the parachutes from the water. Those were automatically cut or released from Dragon upon splashdown, and we retrieved those from the water. This fast boat here is helping to assist the rigging of the required straps and equipment for the spacecraft recovery.
Dragon SpaceX, Dragon to ground is no longer privatized.
Dragon copies.
SpaceX recovery team continues to maneuver around Dragon Endeavour as we continue progress of placing the recovery straps required in order to safely lift the spacecraft out of the water. Something we heard called out earlier prior to the closest approach that we see now was completion of the safety sweeps. That was just indicating that the recovery team performed the required checks to ensure that there weren't any unfired pyros, which are used to...
Dragon, be advised, transitioning forward link. COM will be unavailable for approximately 5 minutes.
One of
Earlier, prior to atmospheric reentry, we heard SpaceX Core report to the crew during the, during the entry brief that recovery conditions were almost pristine, and he was not joking. It seems that the weather, the waves are pretty smooth out there. And Leah mentioned earlier that there are some dolphins out to play as well. Perhaps we might be able to get to see those as the recovery vessel gets a little closer to the spacecraft. On your screen now are our operators at SpaceX Mission Control. They continue to monitor Dragon Endeavour during these recovery operations, as well as communicate directly to the recovery team. Everything is carefully coordinated within our procedures, and here you see folks that are responsible for individual portions to ensure that everything is executed as planned. If you've just recently joined us, we had a perfectly nominal re-entry of Dragon Endeavour. The crew splashed down exactly on time at 12:41 a.m. Pacific time off the coast of San Diego. The recovery team has arrived at the splashdown location and are placing the required straps onto the Dragon spacecraft. The crew are safely inside. Nobody is allowed to pass go just yet. We still have to lift the spacecraft out of the water and onto our recovery vessel.
Dragon SpaceX, forward link transition complete. Comm check.
We've got you loud and clear.
We have you the same.
Hopefully we'll be able to bring those views of the recovery team back. But at this point, I can share that one member of the recovery team is still, oh, there we can see our recovery vessel continuing to approach Dragon Endeavour there in its splashdown location. We still have one recovery team member working to apply the rigging to the capsule. You can see that work ongoing there. As we've seen, this involves climbing on top of the spacecraft itself to attach these hoist rings and connect the lifting lines. Overall, the progress tonight has been very smooth and very rapid. Depending on the sea state, it can take us a little bit longer, but things are really smooth this evening, and the recovery team is very efficient. It takes us less than an hour to raise Dragon onto the recovery vessel and remove the crew from the spacecraft. After initial medical checkouts, the crew will return to land within 4 hours by helicopter. So everything continuing to proceed as scheduled and as anticipated. The ring that you see there on the deck of the, excuse me, of the recovery vessel, that is what we refer to as the nest. That is where the Dragon, once lifted out of the water using the hydraulic lift there at the aft end of the recovery vessel, the Dragon spacecraft will be lifted and placed into that nest, and that nest will then be translated forward on the recovery vessel up to where the egress the egress bay is located. Yeah, so this is a great view there of the recovery team member that is responsible for placing the hoist straps and the rigging required to lift the excuse me, the Dragon spacecraft out of the water. along with the recovery team members located in the fast boat, helping to provide the necessary light, as this is obviously a nighttime splashdown operation. We've done several of these before, and as you can see there, the sea state is super calm, and I'm assuming some really nice conditions to be working in right now. Over time, we can see the primary recovery vessel. This is our recovery vessel Shannon, named after, of course, Shannon Walker, who flew on Crew-11. She is the first female astronaut to fly in our Dragon spacecraft. So we have this vessel named after her. And we can see Shannon slowly but surely getting closer and closer to Dragon Endeavour as it patiently waits there in the glass-like water. Once all the required straps and rings are in place and the recovery vessel is in its location and everything is attached, we'll actually see that recovery team member jump off from the capsule and into the water. It's one of my favorite moments of the recovery process. I think we might, yep, there they are. The dolphins are back to play. We now have a better view of them. I'm sure they're very intrigued by all the lights that are in the area here in the middle of the night in Southern California. If you've just recently joined us, you're tuning in at a great time. We're in the final phases of the Crew-11 return to Earth. They had an on-time splashdown at 12:41 a.m. Pacific time, 3:41 a.m. Eastern time. And as you can see, recovery operations are proceeding very well. Everything is going according to plan, or as we like to say around here, nominal. And we can see the recovery vessel continues to approach Dragon Endeavour, and the recovery team there on the vessel standing by as we await the hoist of the Dragon spacecraft onto the aft end of the vessel. I can say once we make the final approach here to the Dragon spacecraft, the hoisting actually happens. It always takes me by surprise just how fast it is, because you can't really see the full size of the hydraulic lift or hoist there at the aft end of the recovery vessel, but it's pretty big and pretty strong. So we're able to lift the spacecraft out of the water. We can see there that the lines, the guidelines are attached, and they're going to line everything up here for the final approach and ultimately the lift into the nest there located at the back of the vessel.
Now, as you can see, the recovery teams are preparing to lower the vessel's hydraulic lift mechanism, and that's going to bring the spacecraft into the on-deck translation system, also known as the nest. Dragon will remain in the nest during crew extraction and then for the journey back to port. Again, all of this coming right after splashdown at 2:41 a.m. Central Time, right on time, and a really expedient recovery, partially thanks to the calm sea states and great weather that is out in the San Diego area right now, but also due to the swift and very well skilled and practiced efforts of the NASA and SpaceX recovery teams. The spacecraft is now being lifted. It'll be set on the nest and centered. It'll be oriented so that the side hatch is facing forward for the crew to egress. It'll be moved into the hangar underneath that helipad that you see illuminated in green on the top of the ship, and then pulled towards the mezzanine area so that the crew can be helped outside of the hatch. Once open, a SpaceX medical doctor will be the first to check in on Cardman. Fincke, Yui, and Platonov, our Crew-11 crew members, and see if they're ready for egress or exiting the vehicle. This is a standard procedure for all of our crew returns. This view coming from the recovery vessel, as you see Dragon, and at the very bottom, that is the nest in which we were discussing, and that's where Dragon will remain now and all the way back to port. You can also see, facing forward, that is Dragon's side hatch we were discussing. This is the same hatch they used to enter the spacecraft on launch day in August. And of course, this is different from the top hatch. You can not see that because it's underneath the nose cone at the very top of the spacecraft. We've been following along all the way through deorbit burn and nose cone closure tonight. That top hatch underneath the nose cone is what the astronauts and cosmonaut used to enter and exit the International Space Station while Dragon was docked. So before we open this side hatch, the spacecraft's cabin pressure must be equalized with the outside environment. And of course, once that hatch is open, this will be the crew's first breath of fresh air back on Earth since boarding their spacecraft at the start of their journeys back in August. Again, a very by-the-book return.
Platform.
Dragon copies.
Now that voice speaking with the astronauts and cosmonaut on the Dragon spacecraft is still coming from the core in SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California. These team members are making sure that all thrusters are covered before they begin to maneuver the spacecraft toward that egress platform. We'll be standing by live the entire time. This is the 6th flight of this spacecraft. In all, Endeavour has flown 9 NASA astronauts, 3 visitors to the International Space Station, 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts, 1 retired NASA astronaut, 1 ESA astronaut, and an Emirati astronaut from the UAE to and from the International Space Station. Again, this is the 6th mission for this Dragon spacecraft named Endeavour. First launching on May 30th, 2020 to the International Space Station. And if you remember that date, that was the historic Demo 2 mission for the commercial crew program, carrying NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. What you're seeing here are SpaceX team members. They are preparing the vehicle to be moved to that egress platform, making sure everything is safe, that the rigging is properly attached. This is really the final ride on Dragon for these Crew-11 crew members. One short trip to this egress platform, and then they'll begin being assisted out of the spacecraft. Completely normal procedures for all of our returns. And this is a live view from Mission Control in Houston, Texas, the International Space Station Flight Control Room. We have some additional visitors beyond the usual flight controllers and flight directors that staff this room 24/7. In the center of your screen, you'll see NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman speaking with team members, specifically right now the Spartan flight controller. Isaacman is, of course, an accomplished astronaut himself, having flown on 2 missions aboard Dragon, so he is familiar with these procedures and what the crew might be experiencing right now. Back on the recovery ship, the teams continue to prepare to move Dragon to that egress platform. We'll get ready to officially welcome home the Crew-11 astronauts and cosmonaut. Again, that's NASA astronauts Zena Cardman and Mike Fincke, JAXA's astronaut Kimiya Yui, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov, wrapping up a 167-day in space for these crew members. Again, if you're just joining us, thanks for tuning in. This is the live mission coverage of NASA's SpaceX Crew-11 mission returning from the International Space Station back to Earth. As you can see, this is the Dragon spacecraft, and splashdown occurred at 2:41 a.m. Central Time, right on time. This crew undocked at 4:20 p.m. Central Time, so it was about a 9.5-hour ride from space back to Earth. They wrapped up 165 days aboard the International Space Station, 167 days in total for this mission. And we are seeing motion for Dragon. They are pulling it to the egress platform. It's a short distance, and this view coming from that platform itself. This will align it properly with the side hatch, where we will see the astronauts egress or exit the capsule. They will be assisted after being checked on by a